real quick. Hello, everyone that tunes in afterwards and
Hello.
sees us very early.
Hello.
That was a little weird. Okay. Alrighty, welcome in everyone to another breaking news episode of the Batflip Podcast. Damien, David, and Matt here. Got all three of us for a breaking news episode. When was the last time we had that happen? Not
Never,
sure.
right?
I don't think so. But this one is a big deal. It is the San Francisco Giants agreeing to a 7-year, $182 million deal with free agent shortstop Willy Adames from the Milwaukee Brewers. Adames is a really good shortstop, had a 4.8 WAR season this year, 30 plus power or 30 plus homer power. Really good defensively as well. That left side of that infield with Matt Chapman and Willy Adames defensively is going to be really good. Um, so yeah, it's kind of a shocker, but at the same time, not. I think if we look at our predictions, I had him going to the Giants all along. Matt dang near nailed the money. He said 7 years, 180, 7 years, 182. David was the lone one who has no idea what he's talking about.
Never do.
Yeah, pretty much. But Matt, what did you think when I sent that notification in that Adames and the Giants had agreed to a deal?
Well, a few thoughts. Number one, you just think about the team he's going to in the San Francisco Giants, and of course they've been trying to look for a star player for a long, long time, and they've never gotten over the hump with a lot of these free agents that they've tried to sign. You think about the Carlos Correa issue. You had they tried to sign that Bryce Harper a few years ago when he signed with
Judge.
Philly, and then the Judge thing happened. Like you've had several free agents with them, and just it falls through for whatever reason, and it's an interesting move. I know that they have that young shortstop that performed pretty well this year, and Tyler Alexander, is that his name?
Tyler Fitzgerald.
Fitzgerald.
Tyler Alexander's that pitcher. That's right.
Yeah.
So Tyler Fitzgerald, he performed pretty well, but there's some reason to believe that it was a little bit of a mirage. It was a pretty small sample. It wasn't a full season. So Willy Adames is a long-term MLB veteran who's been a good shortstop for a while. He had a career year in 2024. He had a little bit of a down year in 2023, but a lot of it was luck based, a very low BABIP compared to his career norms that year. And back before that, he was really good in 22. He's interesting. His defense has been incredible his first 2 years in Milwaukee. This year it was not as good, but his bat took back off. He had a 119 WRC plus this year. The defensive numbers are kind of mixed on him for this season. He had minus 16 DRS this year, which was kind of crazy considering that he'd been really good in that facet his entire career. And he really just kind of took a little bit of a step back, but on defense. But definitely a guy that it's going to add some power, at at a position that you don't have that many guys that hit for power in, and he's going to play solid defense. It's not like he needs to move off a shortstop or something. So definitely a good move for the Giants. I mean, I think the contract is very fair, similar to the Dansby Swanson contract. I think Adames is probably a tad bit more, a tad bit safer, I would say. But he probably didn't have quite the same upside. But he's a very good player, and the Giants needed somebody to stick in the middle of their lineup and play really good shortstop, and that's what they got.
Yeah, it's a kind of a direct comparison because they're both NL Central kind of adjacent shortstops, right? But Dansby's more plus defense, Adames
Yeah.
more plus offense, right in that same 95 to 100 and 115 WRC plus over the last couple of seasons, and I think this is just the cost of doing business in the shortstop market for guys who have good power. Willie Adames, Dansby Swanson at 26 home runs in his walk year. Willie Adames at 32. I think that's there's only $5 million difference in what 2 or 3 years of inflation. We're baking in. I think that the Giants might have gotten a bit of a discount because Willie Adames is pretty clearly like a guy who this was connected a while back, right? Damien predicted it.
Yeah.
We talked about it in our free agent predictions. Is right. Is that this Willie Adames, the Giants? That was an obvious fit. There was going to be a Giants shortstop signing. It just was this or Ha-Seong Kim, right? And that's a big part of why this connection was always felt right. And I'm not very surprised. I think the money is just about what I thought it would be. I think I had 190. I had 8 years,
Pull
190.
it up
Like
real quick.
I have
8
it.
years, 190. Yep.
Yeah. So, I expected maybe a little bit more of a boost for Adames being 29. But he's going to go play in San Francisco. We've talked about that with Matt Chapman. It's tough to hit in San Francisco, but it's a great ballpark, right? It's a great place to play. I think Willy Adames is going to thrive there. I don't see why not. And Buster Posey, man, I think this is move number 2 of Buster Posey's tenure as the Giants' president of baseball operations. I feel pretty good about his 2 moves in terms of win now, win in the near term, and benefit players. And that's the kind of thing that more players are going to hear about that. And we're already seeing rumors that the Giants are not done and they're hunting after Corbin Burns and they're trying to go out and spend. And this is a team that has been struggling to spend, but seems like Buster Posey's getting the players to agree to these deals.
Yeah, and I still wouldn't even be surprised if Ha-Seong Kim potentially even ends up
Yeah.
there. There's still been some
Play
rumors that they
second
wouldn't,
base or something.
yeah, but that they wouldn't mind even doing that and potentially moving Fitzgerald to the outfield. Having him start at second, and then when Kim's ready, maybe have Kim play second, and then just be really solid defensively, like in the infield. Like Buster Posey, what do those Giants teams always have in common that he was really good on? They were really good defensively, especially on the infield. He very well could want to rebuild that type of system again. A couple things I found interesting from this deal. It is the biggest free agent contract, or the biggest contract in San Francisco Giants history, surpassing Buster Posey himself of $167 million deal, which it might get broken here in the next day or two if they sign Corbin Burns. But the other interesting one is it is the 3rd largest free agent contract ever for a Dominican-born player.
Wow.
Would not have ever guessed that.
Yeah, it's about to be a 4th.
Yeah, the only people had a more expensive one was Albert Pujols and Robinson Cano. Wow. So thanks, Jet Passon, for that note there. But yeah, this is a really interesting deal. Adames was a guy who for years I kind of envisioned like, hey, I would really like that guy to come to LA. With the Andrew Friedman connection, it made a ton of sense there. I hate that he went to the Giants because now he's going to turn into a Dodger killer. But I think it's a really good fit for them. I mean, we've talked about their shortstop problems over the past few years, especially, they wanted to sign Correa. They had the deal, had to back out on that. They just haven't been able to find that guy since Brandon Crawford. And we talked about it when Buster Posey took over. What better guy to sell the city of San Francisco, to get free agents to come there, than the career giant himself, Buster Posey. Farhan Zaidi, for as good of a front office guy as he is, he struggled in trying to sell San Francisco.
Yeah.
Now you have a guy who's played there, this organization, he knows the city, he knows everything about it. He's making the big deals happen. It's not like they weren't able to spend in the Farhan tenure there. They just couldn't get it across the finish line. And Buster Posey's he's making that happen. So I'm going to be excited to see if Adames can be the first guy to break that 30 homer mark for the Giants since Barry Bonds. Hope he doesn't do it against the Dodgers too many times. But I think it's a really good deal, honestly.
Yeah, that's a good point you brought up about the Buster Posey being able to sell San Francisco. I really do think that's been an issue. San Francisco has its reputation around the country, and I think a lot of players are just a little bit skittish to go there, and it also doesn't help them if they really have to overpay because of the taxes in California to get guys. Because, this is basically this would be like $150 million deal in Florida or something. So, it's a lot, it could be a tough sell, but having someone who's been there and played in San Francisco and can show these guys the ropes and say, hey, look, this place is actually really cool. It's a great place to play. I played my entire career here. I'm back here. I want to be here. You should too. That's a good pitch by Buster Posey and that's really the main reason they made that move, because Buster Posey, otherwise, he doesn't have any experience in front offices, making baseball decisions, managing rosters, managing, all this stuff. He really is there to listen to people and have people feel it, and feel people out, and then make some judgment calls because he's been around the game for so long on different guys. and then be able to sell it to guys. It's definitely a different
Mhm.
dynamic than what we've had, which was more of a analytical, front office that was real, and the leader of was real. Was bigger on the, hey, this is who we should go after. Buster Posey is his is how we're going to get this guy, and I think that's really
Yeah.
important. And good for them. I mean, I was a little bit skeptical of the Buster Posey thing, but if it's going to help them sign free agents, that it's going to work out. I mean,
Well, and with Buster Posey, we hadn't talked about it just because of everything else happening. They did bring in the Bobby Evans is the old Giants general manager from the Posey era, as well, to bring as a consultant in with Posey into that front office. So at least he has somebody with that
yeah,
prior GM knowledge to help him navigate that, while Posey can also focus on, hey, like, I know what this organization, what the city does well. Now this guy can help me figure out the baseball terms of the day to day and the contract and stuff like that.
yeah.
So um, yeah,
Yeah, and
he's
I was gonna make one more point here that and ask y'all a question too. Is that you mentioned that, and I think that Buster Posey having those people around him is a big deal. But my question that I want to bring up is, like, we have this Giants franchise right now that really doesn't have that much of a core. They've got a few guys, but their core has really been just veteran 1 or 2 year free agents that have performed fairly well for them without any stars. They don't really have a lot of young star level players. Like, you think about their core and you're thinking of like Lamont Wade and Mike Yastrzemski and Patrick Bailey now, and that's really most of what you Elio Ramos now probably, but that's really most of what you're thinking about. The pitching, you've got veterans really for the most part. Um, so it's just interesting to me that they're spending on more free agents. And this is a franchise that I felt like could go into a mini rebuild for a couple years, build up their farm system a little bit more, and get some young youth, and then go make some big splashes. I felt like that's something that's been needed here for a while. But it's gonna be interesting to me. I think that 107 win season they had derailed that too. But I
Mhm.
was just,
very
I
much
was
so.
just going to see what y'all's opinion on that. And that, is it time for the Giants right now to be trying to contend, or do they need to? And obviously, spending money for a franchise is great and all, no matter what. But do they need to, like, rebuild a little bit and get some younger talent, and then add these free agents where they need them?
I mean, I don't think so. Like it depends on where the additions come from and then
Yeah,
what the player development side of things changes to. Because what we've seen is it's not a cycle that goes up and down. It's a cycle that can go it's more jagged, right? Or it's a consistent increase. Because in the Dodgers, the Braves, Yankees case, it doesn't matter how much, money they spend, old free agents they wind up with, down the road where, when Aaron Judge is 40, the Yankees aren't going to feel that. And these bigger market teams, the San Francisco Giants are a huge market. They're top 10 in
it's
the
probably.
in the group, maybe top 5.
I'd say it's even bigger now because the A's are gone.
The A's are gone.
Yeah,
So you've got a huge market in San Francisco, big city, great city, but it's, you know, it's they can't you can't have bad baseball in San Francisco. They've got to have it
yeah,
on the rise. And a guy like Willy Adames is a perfect signing for this because he's already young. He's 29. He's not 32, 33. You're going to get his best years, moving forward still. And looking at this team, it's not a bad team. They need more help. That's why
yeah,
Buster Posey's going out here and trying to sign Corbin Burns because they need help in the starting rotation. They need to continue to add around this group. And then you've got to have improvement in that farm system, but the Dodgers draft great at the bottom of the draft. The Yankees draft great at the bottom of the draft. The Mariners draft great at the bottom of the draft. The Rangers have drafted well, bottom and top of the draft. Like you have seen a ton of teams that are in big markets capitalize on draft position no matter where it is, right? The Red
yeah,
Sox are the biggest example of this because the couple of times they did have to get a top pick, they've nailed it. So, I don't see it being a problem. And if the Giants have a bad year, they'll pick at the top of the draft and then they'll they'll get a really good pick. But so you have to have that really good player development group. I don't think the Giants have had that necessarily, but I think that's the direction Buster Posey wants to go. He wants the Giants to be on that level.
Yeah, the time for the Giants to rebuild was 3 years ago.
Right.
Like to start it. Like you're not the way that they've gone about their business in the last couple years of Farhan. And honestly, it was the ownership not allowing Farhan to rebuild it.
Yeah.
He
Mhm.
wanted to rebuild
you.
it basically since he got there. Like, what was it? Remember when they wouldn't let him trade?
Mad
Who
Bum?
was it? No, it wasn't Mad Bum. It was Will Smith, the
Oh
closer.
yeah.
He
Oh
wanted to
boy.
trade Will Smith at the deadline, and they wouldn't let him. Because he kind of wanted to kick off the rebuild, and they were like, "Well, we have a chance at a wild card berth," and it's like that never ended up materializing. And then every single year they were like, "Hey, you got to keep doing it." So I don't fault Farhan for that, but the time to rebuild was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Now that you have Buster Posey, you're not in the rebuild
Yeah.
portion, right? You're in the hey, we're going to try and win again. We want to make the San Francisco Giants a legitimate contender again. Now, that being said, they have to do a bunch to be able to get up to
Yeah.
the Padres and the Dodgers.
Right.
But one thing I did find interesting is I was reading an article yesterday about the new kind of Giants mold and what they were looking for. And part of the Posey scenario that he wants to bring in is less platoon players. So he wants to have a more of a consistent everyday lineup and not just the platoon bats. So that's where I think even like a guy like Lamont Wade, you could see him potentially getting moved or not being on
Yeah.
this team long term, especially with him being at first base. You can find a solid everyday first baseman that can fit in that roster pretty easily. So it's going to be interesting, especially if they do get Burns. I think that rotation then is pretty good if you have Webb, Burns, Robbie Ray off his coming back from second year off Tommy John, and then Jordan Hicks and young Kyle Harrison. They got 10 games or 15 games of Jung Hoo Lee before he got injured and missed the entire
Yeah,
year.
that was big. That was a big deal for them this
Like,
year.
You got that. So I think this team, I think they're about third right now in the NL West. Like I think them and the Diamondbacks are really close, especially if they get Corbin Burns.
Mhm.
But you're at the end of the day, it's hard because you're still fighting for a wild card spot. But I think it's about trying to figure out how they can win now, and I think that's why they brought in a lot of different scouts and stuff. Is to like, hey, if we are going to be consistently winning or trying to win, like how can we build the farm system up the right way? Kind of like LA did with Friedman all those years.
Yeah, and I think that begs the question a little bit is how much of a spending team are the Giants gonna be?
Got
Because
another one.
here we go.
Breaking news on the Batfoot podcast.
Tyler O'Neill to the Baltimore Orioles, 3 years, $49.5 million with an
Wow.
opt-out after 2025.
That's interesting.
That's an interesting deal.
Yeah.
I
That's
don't know
gotta
why the
preclude-
Orioles get another outfielder.
That's got to preclude a trade, right? Yeah. Anyway,
You would never
All
know.
their outfield is so left-handed though, with a lot of the young guys, because
Yeah.
they've had they have Kowser who's left-handed and has platoon splits, and also Heston Kjerstad, big platoon splits guy. Tyler O'Neill crushes lefties.
yeah.
So,
This is the Santander replacement.
Yeah. The Santander, with him being gone. But Tyler
Mhm.
O'Neill was good last year. Played a lot more games than he has been playing. Had a 131 WRC plus. He struck out a ton, but he hit a lot of for a lot of power. 31 homers in just 473 plate appearances, 2.5 WAR, and that's a solid player. And you just think about him with his upside. That power speed combo is pretty rare. And if you can maybe get him to cut his strikeouts just a little bit, and then I think they're bringing in the outfield a little bit in Camden Yards again, right?
Left field, yep.
They're not bringing it all the way in, I don't think, but they're bringing it
No.
in a little bit more than they had
Yep.
after they like put it way back there. So it could help them out hit some power at that ballpark. And that's interesting though. 3 years and was it 3 years
49 and
49
basically
and a half.
50.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
There is an opt-out after 2025.
okay, wow, that's pretty interesting with the opt out, because I think 16, 17 million a year for him is not that bad, but but there is some risk there, a lot of injury risk, a strikeout risk. Is his hit tool just gonna evaporate, and having an opt-out kind of scares you a little bit because Baltimore is probably one of those teams that is going to be limited by a $15 million contract if it's not real valuable. I mean, even with the new ownership. So hopefully that doesn't limit any potential extensions or big moves they might be able to make in the future.
Yep.
O'Neill's my biggest concern with regard to considering signing O'Neill was always, he played a lot of games last year, but is that an aberration? Are we more going to see the guy struggling with soft tissue injuries? That was his end of tenure with the Cardinals. The potential was always there, but he missed so much time, and it's time with injuries that tend to be like, you look back at those injuries and it's hamstrings, it's the types of injuries that recur. I tend to get a little less concerned about like pitcher elbows these days, because it seems like once pitchers have like Tommy John, they can come back, and then it's just kind of a, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but that's not predictive, but soft tissue stuff, guys who deal with hamstring injuries, those guys deal with hamstring injuries a lot. And O'Neill is a really big built guy. I feel like the soft tissue injury thing, that's a concern for Baltimore, but that's why you've got him on a 3-year deal instead of a much bigger deal. I mean, he was inarguably a better hitter than like Pete Alonso last year on a per rate basis. Like, this is a huge deal if you get last year's version of Tyler O'Neill, or the version that was like a 6-WAR player for the Cardinals. But how much of that player do you get? Does he struggle with injuries? Does he try to stay on the field through those injuries and perform poorly? Because that's what happened with the Cardinals. It's a big red flag player. But that's why he's got the opt out. He wants to produce for a full season and then go onto the market.
Yeah. Is Adames a Scott Boras client? I don't think he is he?
Adames is not.
Because this was a Scott Boras client.
Yep.
O'Neill. So those Scott Boras guys who are kind of like not the top tier free agents.
Yeah.
They're signing early. I mean, you saw Snell signed early, and Tyler O'Neill's now signed early. You're seeing maybe a little bit of adjustment from the old Scott Boras camp there with
Matt Boyd.
So, well,
Matt Boyd is a Boras client, and he did sign early.
Boras probably
jumped on the
that
chance
to
for that.
he probably outsourced that to a intern or something. But
there were 5 Boras clients that had already signed.
Yeah.
And this is now a 6th. So Scott Boras has definitely reversed course. I think in terms
he doesn't want to get fired again.
Well, and you got 2 more that seems like heating up with
Soto,
with Burns and Soto.
Burns,
But talking about real quick about O'Neill before we jump back to wrap up on Adames. David, you made a good point about the soft tissue injuries. I wonder if getting into a different team's health and regimen system might help that a little bit. Sometimes players just, if you stick with the same organization and things like that keep happening, sometimes you're not strength and conditioned the right way, like their program. I wonder if that might be a thing of it. But to Matt's point, the fact of him going to Baltimore with their outfield so left-handed is really, really interesting, because if you look at his 2024 versus lefties, he had a 215 WRC plus with a 1.179 OPS. Against righties, he had a 91 WRC plus with a 693 OPS. So lefty crusher that it almost screams like platoon style bat there.
Yeah.
To add with that left-handed outfield.
Yeah. He's the strong side of a platoon, I think, is kind of the best way to think about it. He'll hit more, he'll play more than the lefty, but the lefty can come in and play against tough righties or something. Like, he'll probably play 4 days a week regardless of pitcher, and then the lefty might play 2 or 3.
It's worth noting that 91 WRC plus isn't really that. It's not bad,
that bad
for a reverse hand split.
Right,
That's
right.
It's
pretty
just the
good.
Difference.
But it's a big difference, and so he'll start every lefty.
Yeah, the 215 WRC plus to 91. That's a.
Oh yeah, and like Colton Cowser probably had. I don't know. I don't have his numbers pulled up right this minute, but he probably had a one.
I'm looking at
it. He probably had at least a 130 against right-handed pitching, right? Like.
So against right-handers, he had a 130.
Yeah.
WRC
Yep.
plus.
Wow.
And lefties, he had a 89.
Yeah. See, so that's like a
Yeah.
perfect platoon split right there between those two guys, and they're both good enough defenders in left field. Like,
That's
you know,
Yeah.
That's still good. That's still not something I'm necessarily concerned about platoon wise. If your platoons are like, 40, 50, like Jock Peterson, Kyle Schwarber versus lefties kind of platoon where you kind of have to sit that guy against platoon lefties. Like 89, 91 WRs plus isn't bad. Now it's a negative, and you would consider sitting that guy you'd consider sitting a Cowser for an O'Neill, but I think Kjerstad might be worse
yeah.
on the righty lefty split. So he might be the guy that's getting identified
He
as kind
in
of a
20
weaker one. Yeah, he
actually,
might be that
well,
guy.
so in 2024 versus lefties, Kjerstad had a 135, and versus
He
righties, he had a 113. But it was a very small sample size
yeah,
against
he
lefties.
didn't play very much
He only
last year.
had 16 plate appearances against lefties
He only had
this
30
year.
against righties. He
Well,
didn't play
he
very
had
much.
98 against righties.
Oh,
Plate appearances.
30
Yeah, he
games.
played
Yeah,
37 games against righties, but
I can read. It's fine.
you're good.
All right. Well, let's jump back to Adames and wrap that part up real quick, and then we can get out of here. But so overall, like David, let's say they get Adames, or they have Adames, obviously. They get Burns and potentially Kim. What do you think of this Giants team as a whole at that point?
It's a playoff contender. I mean, their bullpen already looks really good. Ryan Walker, took over the closer's role from Camilo Doval last year, so you've still got Camilo Doval in the fold. He hasn't been traded. He did get tendered a contract. That was somewhat of a question there leading up to the non-tender deadline. Their whole group in the bullpen, they got both Rogers brothers right now. Those guys are usually effective. They got a bunch, and as we talked about, they've got a bunch of guys that are like pretty solid role players that we've talked about. I mean, this is a fine team. I don't think Buster Posey is done. I don't think he's even done with just like signing big free agents. I think he'll tinker with this roster a little bit, trade away some of, maybe one or two of those bullpen arms because they've got so many, maybe a Camilo Doval, work in, backup outfielders, try and maybe find a first baseman like Damian was talking about in exchange for Lamont Wade. I think there's plenty of direction they can go, but this is a very clear signal. This team intends to make the playoffs next year. Bring playoff baseball back to Oracle Park. I think that's pretty reasonable. You've got to play with the big dogs because the Dodgers
Yeah.
are in your division. You have to compete with the Dodgers or you're going to be the Rockies and just bowled over every year.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned Camilo Doval. That's an interesting one. His StatCast page was still really good last year, even though he had a little bit of a rough season.
The command escaped him, and
it did.
You feel like that guy. I trust that guy. Like
Yeah.
I've said that guy's one of the nastiest pitchers, relief pitchers in baseball. Like he'd get it back. Like I'm pretty sure he'd get it back. But I'm pretty sure the Giants think that too. They're not just going to give up on their dominant closer.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, he still had a 98th percentile ground ball rate, 95th percentile whiff rate. That's a pretty good combo. So if his walks can just be fine, he's going to be back to being really, really good. But yeah, I think we summed it up on the Adames thing.
Yep. All right. One quick hitting point, just a yes or no question from each of you. Okay. Will this be the year somebody breaks the 30 homer drought for the Giants? David?
No.
Matt?
No, I just don't see who's going to do it.
I'm not doing game day full sweep here. I'm going to say yes.
Maybe.
Not so fast, my friend.
I mean,
not so fast.
Yeah. I mean, who do y'all think, I guess expanding on that, who do y'all think will do it? Adames? I mean,
it's Chapman or Adames.
Chapman or Adames.
And neither of them are a lock to
Yeah.
hit 30 in a park that isn't Oracle.
Well, I mean, Chapman had 27 last year, and he had that like super horrendous start. So like, there's an opportunity.
Look, we're not gonna diss on Matt Chapman again next year. He might be the original guy the whole time.
Oh, we're dissing him in the off season. He's gonna be like 2018 Matt Chapman now.
33 homers.
Then he would break it.
He actually didn't hit 30 that year. He hit 36 in 2019. He had I was talking about his 6.5 WAR season, but yeah, the 2019 Matt Chapman, it's coming.
So funny enough,
we're wishing it willing it into existence.
Looking at Baseball Savant, it says in 2024, if Willy Adames played in San Francisco, he would have had 31 homers.
Well, there you go.
That does just overlay the batted ball profile onto Oracle Park, so it's 162 games in Oracle Park.
Yeah, but still.
But still, right? Because he'll get games, he'll get more games in Coors,
Mm-hmm.
right? He'll get to play in Dodger Stadium, which
Arizona.
is Arizona. Arizona was a high octane offense last year, so
Yeah.
he's this is a shift. One quick thing I think to close this out, the Brewers lose a really big piece, and that
Yeah.
team is not going to spend.
I think it was
What are
kind
they
of
gonna
already.
do?
I think it was already kind of set in stone, like they were going to lose Adonis.
Mm-hmm.
And the plan, I imagine, is Joey Ortiz,
Joey Ortiz. Yeah. I mean,
which they got in the
But
Burns
that-
deal
then-
last year.
Then you're loud on third base. Ortiz was there at third base all year.
No,
yeah, I
but
think
they have
so.
you have Terang and you have
Second
base.
Frelick.
Triangle
Well,
plays
like-
Frelick's outfield.
They
I
look
think
outfield.
They're
They're missing an infielder.
Listen, they played Frelick at second base some, and they had said going into the offseason they were going to try him some at third.
man,
So I'm not saying it's dead. Like that's what they're going to do.
that is
but-
a light hitting infield.
Frelick,
That is a very, very
Yes.
Brewer solution.
Frelick
Yeah.
is an outfielder, but he has been training
Trying to
at
play.
infield somewhat.
Yeah.
So
Am I crazy or did they have a prospect? Tyler Black, that was their prospect that was supposed
Yeah.
to have played some third
He's-
base last year. That he really struggled. It looks
He's-
like he didn't play
he's
that
a first,
much.
and he's a first baseman. I
Yeah,
think. He's one of
yeah.
those guys that's corner infield, but
Yeah, but
not
but
really.
first base. Yeah. Max Muncy.
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised
Muncy
if
can
they
get
do a
away with it.
buy low guy.
Maybe they're the ones that go after Moncada. I just
Yeah.
Potentially.
I think the
it's like-
Brewers
yeah,
do someone.
They'll get somebody.
Yeah,
for sure.
but it's
I mean,
it's not going to be
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Bregman.
you do got it won't be Bregman, but you do got to remember the Brewers did spend on Rhys Hoskins last year. That was like a 18-20 million dollar investment. I mean, I thought it was more than that.
I thought it was 2 for
maybe not.
24,
It might have been. I don't know. But I mean, they, I don't know.
and he
We'll
was
see.
not that good.
I mean, I wonder if they
No,
might
not
get in on
really.
that other infielder that was posted from Japan as well.
Ooh,
Possibly.
Heisen.
You could plug because
Ken.
he's a shortstop, right? Like he's a legit
Second,
shortstop
second or third.
or second. Okay.
He's also really light hitting, supposedly. Like,
Yeah. He's basically
may,
Bryce Terang.
may
and
not
Sal
hit any
Frelick.
homers.
Yeah.
Yeah, he may not hit any homers. Yeah.
Maybe.
So
Alrighty. Well, that was our Willy Adames to the Giants episode. Spoiled with a Tyler O'Neill to the Baltimore Orioles in the middle of it. But make sure to let us know what you think of this move and follow our TikTok. We've now done that. All three of us are starting to put out breaking news TikToks there that'll let you know if we're going live or whatever. And be sure to watch the YouTube, put that on because I have a feeling we're going to be going live the next couple days with some more breaking news items. So be on the lookout. It's the off season and then winter meetings week, and this is when we're going to shine. So
Yeah. See y'all in the fourth quarter of the Clemson game when Juan Soto signs
yeah, can't wait for that.
or the Oregon
Go
game.
Tigers.
the
Okay.
Oregon game.
Go
Hey,
Tigers. Go Ducks.
Go Ducks. Let's go. Alrighty. See you guys.